So here we go, regular board. It works. You go, this isn't going to help me. You go, why is this not going to help me? You go, in order to put this on my CNC bed, I'm going to have to cut a hole in my CNC bed, and I don't want to do that. I have a solution for you. I've been on a quest for a while to make a low-cost vacuum table for my CNC that could be easily machined, that was customizable, that could be used at a workstation, or it could be used directly on a CNC without having to destroy my CNC bed or spend a lot of money on a vacuum pump or special fittings or a new compressor. I just want it to run off my shop vac, and I want to do it for under 25 bucks. I'm going to show you today how to do it. I think I have the perfect solution. As long as you have a shop vac and a router or a CNC, you should be good to go. Here's the hack. What you're going to need to start with is a piece of melamine board. You can either get in a 4x8 sheet, or you can get a little shelving piece like I have done here. And you can pick the shelving piece up for about 15 bucks. A melamine 4x8 is about $43. So if you want to make a huge one of these, you're going to need a bigger sheet of melamine. If you just want to get a shelf piece, look in the shelving section and you're going to find melamine coated. And you want it so that it has a melamine surface on both sides of the board. Why do we want that? Because it will seal off the board when we create our vacuum, which is half the issues of these vacuum tables. You need a sealed board. The next thing you're going to need in order to make this is you're going to need an orbital sprinkler head. This is a 2-inch orbital sprinkler head that I have here. And that orbital sprinkler head, what we're going to do is we're going to take it apart. And if you twist it, you'll see there's like a little rubber gasket there. And if you pull on it, you'll pull the spring on the inside and you'll be left with a hollow chamber. This actually is perfect for making a vacuum table. Why? Because where the thread is, just below it, there's a lip. And if we carefully cut the hole in our piece of melamine that's just big enough to fit over the threads, but too small to go over that lip, then we can put it in with a friction fit from the underneath side, and we have a very, very nice fitting that is suitable for a pressure situation. So use the bottom of the sprinkler head. Save this because we're going to use this for a project in another one of my later videos. And then what are we going to do with that? We're going to cut a hole that's exactly the right size in our melamine, and we're going to, with friction fit, put it in here. If you do the dimensions that I'm going to show you later in the video, it's going to fit very, very tightly. It may require you to tap it in or push it in hard with your hand. And if you want more, you can always seal it off with hot glue or epoxy or something like that. The other thing we need to do is we need to create a grid. This is a simple prototype that was my first one to see whether or not this concept would work. I really wanted to do this without trying to do the rubber gasket that so many people do when they make these. I wanted to see if I had a flat surface to begin with that was very, very consistent, if it would hold down a vacuum using a regular vacuum cleaner. So the other thing we need to do is we need to have an easy fitting from our vacuum to this. That's where our next hack comes from. And that is we need a pool noodle. Maybe you saw this in the last video where I was vacuuming cobwebs off the ceiling of my garage. Well, if you take a snippet for one of those pool noodles, it makes a perfect coupler between an orbital sprinkler head and your vacuum cleaner. So take that, you got a coupler. This is a Festool fitting. It works good on Network XL. I also showed you in the last video how to custom fit it to different shop vacs. Fits on like so. We've got our sprinkler head on here. If you wanted, you could use, a ring clamp, and you could really latch these down for a more permanent solution. But for our purposes, I want to show you how fast that goes together. And now I want to prove that this thing has a lot of suction and has capability of holding the board down when you're either sanding it off, routing around the edge as a workstation, or maybe even machining it with your CNC. So I'm going to turn on the vacuum. Lots of air coming through. There's a regular board. What about if you wanted to machine something like a 1/4 inch, Actually, it's probably an 1/8 inch laminated piece of plywood. This is really inexpensive to buy these, but oftentimes they have a bow in them. It would sure be nice to have a vacuum table so that we could take that and we could pull that bow out, so when we're V-carving, we get a nice flat surface. Let's see if it works. That's plenty if you're V-carving this. It's going to hold it down really, really nicely. That's the prototype. It would be nice if we had a bigger grid to hold it down in multiple spots, because basically it's going to be pulling it flat against all the surfaces that you have these little raised islands where the channel goes around. And the other thing is, this doesn't, you go, how's this going to work on my CNC? Am I going to have to cut a hole in my CNC? That's my best hack of this video. You don't need to. In fact, you go, am I gonna, have to mount this strange on my workbench? It'd be really nice if there was a way that I could just have a little edge going off. There is. So whether you're using it for your CNC or whether you're using it for your workstation, you're gonna like this hack. So this is actually the size of the board that I got for 15 bucks. It's a melamine shelving. You can just find it in the shelving section of your big box stores. It's a little thinner than 3/4 of an inch. I think it's like 16 millimeters or something in thickness, but it works great. Still plenty thick for what we need. And you can see that I did sort of a test grid here with the same sprinkler up design, but then I used this design. What if we had our sprinkler head off the edge of the bed of our CNC, had a channel that went out to the grid in the middle of our machinable area of our CNC, and we had a way to seal that up? Well, let's test to see whether that would work or not. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take and we're going to install our sprinkler head. You can see it was a tight fit. So I've got our sprinkler head installed. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to hook up our vacuum, and you might want to, put some duct tape on here so it doesn't slip off when I'm tossing these things around. It sometimes will give. All right, so we got that set up. I'm gonna turn this on. Scenario number one, just put a board over that first part of the channel. Push down on it for a second so it creates the vacuum. And then I can't even move it. It is anchored. And of course, this is the area you'd be machining. And this is off the end of your CNC, so you didn't have to modify the bed of your CNC in order to make this work. You could also put this off the back side of your CNC if you want your vacuum set up on the back side. So something to keep in mind, you don't have to put the vacuum connector on the front side of your CNC. You could do it off the back side of your CNC, and you didn't have to cut a hole in your CNC. That's a big deal. It's a big, big deal to do it this way. Is there another way you can do this? Yes. Clear packing tape you can put over the top of this, and if you seal the end of the packing tape against the piece of wood down here at the bottom, you're going to find it works. I'm going to show you that later in the video. Before I show you the final dimensions on how to set this up on your CNC, machine your own vacuum table, if you could hit like and subscribe. I'm a very small channel, and that would really, 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 really help me out. It takes a lot of work to put these videos together, and if you could hit like, subscribe, maybe even leave a comment, I would so appreciate it. Now, let me give you the dimensions, but before I do, I need to talk about safety for a second. Number one, when you machine melamine on your CNC, make sure you have a dust mask on, make sure you have your safety goggles on, make sure you have good ventilation around. You don't want to be breathing in particles of melamine into your lungs. Number 2, everything that I have done, you need to test out on your shop vac. You need to test out before you put any power tools to make sure that you believe it's holding it down securely for whatever machine speed that you're going to run your machine at. You need to make the assumption that one day your vacuum is going to give out, or a hose is going to break, or something like that, and have a way of securing that wood on the surface in addition to the vacuum that's going to make it safe. That's on you. Everything that I'm doing, you need to test out on your own, evaluate whether it puts too much strain on your vacuum cleaner. I'm going to use this, but that doesn't mean I've worked out the bugs. This is a prototype. Use at your own risk. I make no disclaimers. I will say this, have safety goggles on whenever you use one of these, and have an alternative way of securing down not only your melamine board to your surface or your spoil board, but once you get this vacuum down, I would put an additional security on the board that you're holding down, just as a fail-safe if this whole thing gives way because your vacuum either breaks or something gives. Highly recommend it. Now let's talk about machining this. First thing, the grid. Obviously you could do whatever size grid you want. I think a 7x7 or an 8x8, spacing the lines out 1 inch a piece works really, really well. I cut on the lines with a 1/4 inch bit. I go down 4 millimeters, and I found that worked rather well. I highly recommend that when you do this, that you do it in long poly lines. And if you tune into my next video, if you are a V-carve user, I will show you how to set that up. It will reduce your machining time down by about 50 to 70% over doing little squares along the way. You don't really want to do your tool pass that way. You want it one continuous poly line, go all the way around your grid, and then come around, keeping the same continuous poly line all the way over, and then hit stop on your polyline tool. If you do it that way, then what you're going to find is when you set up your tool path, it doesn't have to go up and down with the Z. It will really, really reduce the machine time. If you do it right on your design, you should be able to grid out with a 1/4 inch bit to 4 mil depths, even doing 3 or 4 passes. So you're doing small passes at a time with a downcut bit, super important, in 3 to 5 minutes for your grid. The channel that you cut is going to be dependent, its length is dependent upon how far you need to go to get off the bed of your CNC, whether it's the front side or the back side. So if you're cutting a channel, you need to set that up. I would do a pocket path on a rectangle. The one that I use is 20 millimeters wide, and of course you're going to have to set the length for your particular machine if you're going to do the design where this is going off the bed. The hole for your orbital sprinkler head, first of all, you need to get a depth of cut, of course, for your particular piece of melamine. Shelving melamine is going to be a different thickness than the melamine that you buy in the store, and you need to measure that, and of course cut to a depth proportionally with appropriate number of passes for your machine. I use a 1/4 inch, the same 1/4 inch bit I use for the grid, I use for the pocket cut of the channel, and I use for the cutout of this. When you're cutting out the hole for your fitting here, be expecting that piece to go flying out. So fix down some double stick tape on the bottom, or consider using tabs, and then you'll have to clean them up afterwards. So what is the diameter of that hole, which is a critical diameter? I found to get a tight friction fit, you need 43.75 millimeters of diameter. So do a circle in your design software, 43.75 millimeters. And of course, you're going to do an inside cut. Don't do line on. Do an inside cut with your 1/4 inch down cut end mill. Or if you're an inch person, that would be 1.7224 inches. 1.7224 inches inside cut of a circle, and make sure, of course, that it overlaps the channel that you cut, and that channel extends all the way to the edge of your grid so that it's got a pass through. Now let's go and let's look at an additional way besides dropping a board over that channel to seal it up. is there another way that we could do this? And the answer is yes. I find it's an elegant way, and that is get yourself some 3M Scotch storage packing tape. And it just so happens that this is wide enough that it will go over the opening here of our Orbit sprinkler head, and it will also cover this in one fell swoop. So let me show you this going on. What you want to do is you want to have a little bit extra going out towards that grid. So I'm going to go set this on here like so. I'm leaving about a centimeter going out over the grid. I'm not going to force it down, and then I'm going to center it over the channel. And if you do this right, and your channel you centered, and then I'm going to go off the end of my board about a centimeter. And then I'm going to seal, pressing down very tightly on the edge of that melamine all the way to the end so that there's no pockets. And then tightly go over the end here. I would use one more piece of the strapping tape and cross it over this way. So we have something that looks something like this. It's sealed very tightly. It's sealed here. It's sealed on the end. And now, let me show you what you don't want to do, and then I'm going to show you what you need to do. So if you were to do this, you might think that if you just leave it like this, and you toss your board on there like so, and don't have it off the end of the table or it obviously won't work. And if I hit go, it doesn't work. What's the problem? The answer is you need to take that strapping tape, and we need to, as I wrap it over itself, you need to have that board over the end, and you need to push it on the surface of your other board, and then take your fingernail and rub it along the edge so it gets a tight seal so that channel is sealed off good. And then we're going to turn on our vacuum, and we need to push down on the surface of the board until the vacuum catches. If you listen with your ear, you can tell when you've got it going. So let's test this. Can you hear the difference? I can't. Okay, this. It's a lot of force. A lot of force to get that. I probably could have gone out one more square when I made that grid. This was a 8x8. I probably, for a 12x12, it would have been worth a 9x9. Don't go out with your grid beyond the edges of your piece of wood that you're going to use. Make sure that your grid is smaller than the max area that you have. And so do that. Melamine's cheap enough that you can make multiple fixtures. And I would recommend that when you set up your board, you also consider putting some index pins so that when you set it on your spoil board and you fix it down to your spoil board, because of course you need to do that before you try to machine anything on your CNC, that this thing will always be parallel and perpendicular to those lines, and it'll be lined up with your particular CNC. So highly recommend before you, when you initially set this up, some of you already have a setup. You've already got T-tracks and things like that. You can fix it however, or you've got bench dogs or things like that, or you already have, and you know what the spacing is. So I can't, tell you do X or Y or Z, because it's going to be customized to your particular CNC and the way of fixing things down. Now, is there one more thing that we could do besides this strapping tape? If you think this is ugly, which I don't think it's horrible, but here's another thing you can do. Get a small piece of plexiglass and go ahead and hot glue it down on the surface over the top of your channel. Make sure there's no leaks along there, and then just take maybe an inch or two of the packing tape to finish off the channel and fix it to your board so you get a nice seal. And I hope that's all helpful. once again, if you tune to my next video, if you're going to design this in VCarve, I really recommend that you at least listen to the part of the video where I talk about how to set up the paths for this grid. It sounds simple, but there's an efficient way of doing it, and there's the way most people do it. And the way most people do it is incredibly inefficient. If you can make grids very, very efficiently, that machine very efficiently, then you can replace any of these spoil boards that you might accidentally cut through when you're machining something and remake one of these. This whole thing will machine in less than 10 minutes. And if you can do that, I think you will be really, really happy with this setup. So hope you stay tuned. If you haven't hit like and subscribe, please hit like and subscribe. I trust that you've seen something that's intriguing, and for less than 20 bucks, you can give it a try. I think you're gonna like it. By the way, don't steal sprinklers out of your yard, because your wife's gonna know when spring comes and there's a missing sprinkler head. So shh, don't tell her.